the thesis that you lay out early in your book, published a year ago, is this: the trends that in 2016 seem to usher in a period of unparalleled racial animosity are, after 2020, pointing the way toward less racially polarized voting and a less racially polarized society. If a multiracial realignment happened, I concluded in a study that you did previous to the book, it would not happen as a repudiation of populism or Trumpism, but as a result of non-white voters moving toward them in much the same way that working class whites had. So, my question for you is, to what degree is this what happened in the 2024 election?
I think it's a lot of what happened. If you look at the New York Times map that showed the swing from 2020 at the county level in all the counties that have already been counted, virtually all of it is red. Now, virtually all of America is not non-white, and New York has non-white majority counties, right? So it was a part of it, but a big part of it. Clearly people were dissatisfied with the state of the economy, but more than that, just felt things had gotten out of control and wanted to. I think in a sense that we got from focus group, the sentiment was stop the madness, and it wasn't just economic. It was the sense that we lost control of the border. Crime was out of control in their local areas. What was going on with the schools during the pandemic, all of them kind of tied together for, I think, a desire by voters to have a stronger leader at the helm. So we asked at the end of the in our final survey, what is this election about to you? And the top two answers people gave is, in terms of what you want in a president, was somebody who can bring about change and somebody who is a strong and decisive leader, far more than people saying, I want somebody who is the right temperament, or I want somebody who cares about people like me, all attributes that Kamala Harris was leaning on. So the election was really fought on Trump's ground. And in particular, obviously, we saw these huge gains. Whites in this election barely moved, maybe moved by a couple points, but we continued to see this non-white realignment into the Republican Party with double-digit gains among Hispanics. There's some disagreement in the exit polls around African Americans, who are obviously much more loyally Democratic voters. But in one exit poll, they shifted 14 points right, in another exit poll by 4 or 5 points. But it seems very clear that Black men, that were also a big focus prior to the election, have in fact shifted by more than that into the Republican Party. Now, Trump, I think, was very cognizant of this. In fact, his whole podcast strategy prior to the election really, I think revolved around young men, really driving that gender gap. And it's happened. He flipped males 18 to 44 in, they voted for Biden. Now they're voting for Trump with double-digit gains. So he did do a lot of things intentionally to try to drive this forward. But at the end of the day, this very much looks like a version of the kind of election we would have gotten if it were Biden versus Trump, and maybe Biden had a few more of his mental faculties still left. All right, the coalition were exactly the same as those, or were pretty similar to the ones that we were starting to see in the polls a year ago, where we saw it starting to see declining Black support, declining Hispanic support for Biden at the time, and that has translated somewhat over to Kamala Harris.
The popular narrative last time around was very much one of, it's the white woman, the suburban white woman, they're to blame. And it seems like the narrative that is forming this time around is very much, turns out a bunch of Latino voters don't really care about Tony Hinchcliffe's Madison Square Garden insult comedy. And turns out they actually don't really like it when NPR refers to them as Latinx over and over again. And turns out an awful lot of Latinos fled communism or socialism, and in fact have fairly traditional values that do make them, frankly, just, some groups more conservative than a lot of the Democratic Party would like to admit. How true is this narrative? And can you break down some of the generational divides in terms of voting patterns where we're seeing slightly different results from first generation Latinos and second, and fourth generation Latinos? Are we not?
No, and we have. Just to take your point, you mentioned, I can't resist jumping on this, the point about white women, because in the exit poll, Trump won white suburban women by 51 to 47. He did better among 18 to 44 year old women. And that was one of the groups he was most improved on. In fact, I think he improved more with them than improved in the election overall. So everything Kamala Harris tried to do to make this election about abortion rights, or tried to do to make this election, I don't think she explicitly foregrounded her gender, but that was obviously very obvious. None of that seemed to actually show up anywhere in the election results in terms of any groups that were kind of moving her way. Maybe you could make an argument that they sort of there was like this upper echelon of college educated women who made over $150,000 a year, but that is exactly the type of voter who is not, not at all probably, if you want to, any group that has the luxury of not voting on inflation and the economy, that's it. But yeah, I think that the Hispanic vote is remarkable, and it's particularly the Puerto Rican vote, that the statistics that you highlighted, in that a lot of these groups are very different from one another. So Cubans and Puerto Ricans and Venezuelans and Colombians are not. They vote. You see from this, a lot of them vote very differently. Cubans in particular, from each other, but they don't feel the sense of shared group identity. So when we talk about the Latino vote, that is merely a descriptor that we're imposing from the outside.
Hey, that was a clip from Just Asking Questions. You can watch another one here or the full episode here. And if you like what you see and what we do, please help us launch our new channel by subscribing below and get notified whenever we post new clips or full episodes. Thanks.